sniper, long range, 6'11", with a 7'6" wingspan. Giannis ain't that dude. Giannis is great. Giannis is a champion. He is somebody that has elevated himself to being one of the preeminent faces in the National Basketball Association. No question about that. I give you that. He's top 3. I even agree with you there. You want to go there? That's fine. But we need to talk about knocking guys like Kawhi or others off the pedestal. When we're talking about the best in the game of basketball, resumes do matter. It doesn't matter what just happened immediately because of the plethora of injuries you yourself pointed to, Max. We've got guys that have been injured and has been out, and we don't hold that against them. We don't use that as an excuse to knock them off the pedestal. We wouldn't be calling Giannis less than great if Giannis couldn't play in the NBA Finals because of that hyperextended right knee that he suffered. So we got to ultimately look at their resume and their skill set. And when it comes to skills, especially with those Beetlejuice eyes of yours, I keep telling you about that. The one man on this planet that does not need glasses is you. To sit up there and talk about him as the best in the world, I appreciate the fact that you just said he's top 3, but he's in the discussion. No, he ain't better than Kevin Durant.
Well,
let's pump those brakes.
Look, first of all, if we assume he's a 90% free throw shooter, I don't think we can assume that. But assuming what we saw last night is him, like if you can't put him on the line, if you can't put Giannis on the line as a strategy, good luck, because he has gotten better since the guy who won 2 MVPs under pressure. He can find the open man better than he ever could. He doesn't have to initiate the offense every time. But also you have to consider this. What he said at the podium last night, when he hit, he says, I could have gone somewhere and joined a super team. I don't think he was talking about KD. Might have been talking about a teammate of KD. But it could apply to KD. He didn't go and chase the ring. He stayed right where he was. He got lucky that Brooklyn got hurt, but no one's beating a team with KD, Harden, and Kyrie all healthy. That's not on Giannis. That's just no one could do it. So he got to look. But he also got hurt, played through it, came back, played huge, hit his free throws, and didn't ring chase. It all adds up. Like, he doesn't have guard skills and perimeter skills that KD has. That's true. But he has other stuff that KD doesn't have in the paint. He is with KD and LeBron in the conversation.
I just think that America needs to know the only reason I'm having this conversation with you is because I'm obligated to do so because we're doing First Take. Because if you were somebody on the street that brought up the same argument, I'd walk the hell away from you and simply ignore you because it makes no sense. The fact of the matter is that the discussion about the validity or the authenticity of a particular championship is a separate subject. If you want to talk about one ring chasing compared to the other, that's a different discussion, and I concede that. I understand that. I'm talking talent. I'm talking watching the game of basketball and seeing what a brother does from a skilled position.
Then of course KD is more skilled.
He's not on KD's
level. There were more skilled players than Shaq,
too.
There were more skilled players than Shaq, but none of them were better than Shaq. So you call Shaq, for example, the most dominant. That's really a way of just saying he's the most effective. That's another way of saying he's the best. And KD has more skills. But you know what KD hasn't done? KD hasn't shown that he could take a team that's just in the mix, not a dominant team, and win a championship. Giannis just did. Giannis just did that.
Max, zip it, bro. Because your argument goes right out the window because just days ago, you were getting on everybody talking about how lucky Milwaukee was because of the plethora of injuries. You literally said on the air that this championship you wouldn't attach an asterisk to it if you had to, but ultimately you pointed out how one injury after another got in the way to somewhat give fodder to the. Wait a minute, I heard you. Listen, you said those things. So what I'm trying to say is ignore all of that. Forget all of that for a second. Just focus on the skill. That's what this conversation is about.
But sometimes the more skilled player's not as good.
No. What happens is you change the narrative and you change the subject for your liking. I don't particularly have any interest in that discussion. I'm talking from a basketball skilled perspective.
That's your
Giannis
definition.
is phenomenal. He is great, but he ain't Kevin Durant.
Right. So if we have this debate, if we have this debate according to your definition of what best means, which incidentally is incorrect, then of course you're going to win the debate. But the most skilled player is not always the best player. For example, there were many more skilled players than Shaq. No, you time out.
First take is on the television. Look at the bottom line. Giannis, the best player on the planet. That was the question.
Was the best player.
I answered the question.
Shaq was the best player on the planet, even when he wasn't the most skilled, because he was most physically dominant. You and I agree. If you make me order them right now, I would say LeBron, KD, Giannis. But I can't prove that. Giannis is right there with them. And best means the most effective. And the most skilled player is not the most effective if someone else can impose their physical will.
So Max Kellerman is on national television telling people what the definition of best is.
No, you are.
It's really a damn shame I have to talk basketball.
Is better.
Now you're lying to the American public.
Let me ask you a question. Answer the question, because it's not rhetorical.
When it comes to basketball, there's nothing that you utter out of your mouth that's remotely even on my level.
It's not rhetorical. This is a real question.
Honest with you.
Were there more skilled players than Shaq when Shaq was in his prime?
Excuse me?
Were there more skilled players than Shaq when Shaq was in his prime?
Well, that depends on how you look at it.
Were there more skilled players, yes or no?
Because you're 7'1". You're 7'1". Yes, you dunked on people. But did you see Shaq's agility, his mobility, his athleticism,
agility
his
and mobility
post moves, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, I thought there was a couple of players more skilled than Shaq.
Right.
Absolutely.
More skilled, better.
Okay, because now we're debating the definition of better. So let's move on here. So as for the Suns and Chris Paul, they've lost their 3 NBA finals. And still looking for the franchise's first championship, Chris Paul became the first player to lose 4 best-of-7 series in which his team led 2-0. He's one of 5 players ever with 10 or more All-NBA selections without winning an NBA title, alongside Hall of Famers Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, and Elgin Baylor. Here's CP3.
It'll take a while to process this or whatnot, but it's the same mentality. Get back to work. You know what I mean? I ain't retiring, if that's what you're asking. That's out. So, back to work. Nobody probably expected us to be where we are except for us, but excuse me, it is what it is. Like I said, all season long with our team, ain't no moral victories.
Stephen A., do you think Chris Paul's legacy has taken a hit after these finals?
No. I don't think it's elevated, but I don't think it took a hit because even though there was a couple of games he certainly could have played better, and he ended up losing in the NBA Finals. Last night in Game 6, he was the best player on the court for the Phoenix Suns. He showed up. Devin Booker, God bless him, because I got a lot of love for that kid, and I think he's got a bright future. He didn't show up to his capabilities. Mikal Bridges was a no-show. Crowder wasn't that effective offensively, even though his numbers ended up decent. DeAndre Ayton looked absolutely petrified. He was bobbling rebounds. He was bobbling passes into the interior. He wasn't himself. Cameron Johnson is somebody that was not embraced as far as I'm concerned. I thought he spent a lot of time being ignored for most of this series, not to my liking. And then last night when you needed him to deliver, he couldn't do it as well. And I'm looking at a 36-year-old miniature guard at 6 feet, devoid of the athleticism that, a lot of these guards have. And he went out there and he got them to Game 6 of an NBA Finals. Again, his stock was not elevated because he ultimately lost in the NBA Finals and lost 4 straight games after being up 2-0. And it's the 4th time in his playoff in his career that he's lost a 2-0 lead in the postseason, which is the most in history. We get all of that. But in the end, if he had wet the bed, if he had played like garbage, if he had not showed up to do what he could, that would be different. There were times last night I wished he would have been a bit more aggressive shooting the basketball, but they had clearly made the decision, we're going to live and die with Booker, and they kept giving Booker the ball. But in the end, Chris Paul ended up being their best player on the court in Game 6. And because of that reality, I look at him and I don't say it's diminished. I just say it's stagnant. It's not going anywhere. It certainly wasn't elevated. And that's what the reality is for me.
Okay, now, I want you to stay with me here. I want your cranky self this morning who hasn't slept in a month to stay with me here. because I want to hear your response to this.
Okay.
He has hurt. His legacy was hurt. And this is what I mean. Chris Paul is a brilliant player, the perfect point guard, point god. But there have been many collapses in the playoffs in the past. And you can come up with plausible excuses for many of them. But still, he was usually the best player on the team. And the one time especially in the first half of that game, especially early. They all look tight, including their leader, who is Chris Paul, who sets the tone. And so, once again, what people will point to is Chris Paul had games where he blew it, where he didn't step up in the playoffs. It gives me no pleasure to say this. I love Chris Paul. I was rooting for him to win this game openly. Even though I'm supposed to be important.